Hello and welcome to, or if you're a previous viewer, welcome back to my video channel. I'm Raj Kletke. Due to the pandemic, 2020 has been a very unusual year, and this winter's series of my videos will also be unusual. It'll be titled Choices in Fly Tying and Fly Fishing, and will relate predominantly to tying trout flies and trout fishing. I'm envisioning a series of brief videos describing why I make the choices I do when tying trout flies or trout fishing. Perhaps the comment section of these videos may function as a small forum for why you make your choices on related topics. So let's get started. We'll start with looking at hook selection. One hook manufacturer makes over 25 different styles of hooks. With the need for multiple sizes, you could easily buy over 100 different hook packages. But how many different hooks do you really need? How do I choose which hooks I buy and use? First, I define how I like to fish, which defines what flies I'll tie. I predominantly fish for trout in streams and rivers with relatively lightweight fly rods. I enjoy imitating common organisms, which means fishing with medium to small dry flies, emergers, soft hackles, and nymphs, both for hatches and for searching. I use streamers and large flies occasionally, but I don't enjoy casting huge flies with my usual trout rods, so I usually don't need hook sizes larger than 6 or 8. Sizes 14 and 16 are very common, and if you're a new fly tyer, these are good sizes to start with. But the insects found on many of the common hatches are much smaller, so I commonly tie and use sizes down to 24. I even tie some smaller ones for fun, but I don't find myself fishing with these very often. Incidentally, is hook size the best way to define the size of an organism or the size of the fly that you want to tie? Many articles describe organisms by hook size, and most stores sell their flies this way. Are hook sizes even fully standardized among all the different manufacturers? Here are two similar sized dry flies tied on two different size hooks. One looks more proportional to the hook, but both could be fished. And here are three soft hackles tied on the same hook size. Number 3 looks obviously smaller, and number 2 has a shorter body than number 1. Is it the hook, the body, the hackle, or other parameters that really determines the best size? I do use hook sizes and my sense of balance for most flies I tie in size 16 and larger. The proportional difference between a size 16 and 14 isn't that great. But for smaller hooks, the proportional difference becomes much greater, so I commonly measure features of importance in millimeters and then choose an appropriate hook. I check body length and wing height, of course, but I also measure the thorax of trico spinners, as their especially wide thoraces indent the water surface and, I think, is a triggering figure. I probably should be measuring other parameters also, as I believe the foot spread, which causes surface indentations on quiet water, is possibly a trigger, but the tail length, or even lack of a tail, has never seemed to be an important trigger to me. Size of the organism isn't the only consideration when choosing hook size. Sometimes a little extra hook weight may be helpful, and I feel that a wider gap may be more important than hook or shank length when dealing with hooks smaller than size 18. However, for me, the most important consideration is still the basic proportional aesthetics. I try, but still don't tie very good-looking flies. But basic balance between hook size and organism size does look better, gives me more confidence in the fly, and therefore I fish it better and catch more fish. This simple blue wing olive imitation is the correct fly size, but it looks terrible on this size 12 hook. I would have no confidence trying to fish this fly even if I could get it to float. Who knows, maybe a trout would take it though. The number of choices for styles can be overwhelming, but can quickly be shortened by ignoring some of the more unique styles meant to convince you that they're the only style that'll work in very selective situations. Generally, you don't get refusals because of the hook style. Tie better flies on the hooks you have, and learn to cast and mend better. You'll commonly see the X system for various styles, which relates the changes from the supposed standard size. For example, a size 16 1X long shank implies that the shank is the same length as a standard size 15 hook. A size 16 to 14 or 16 to 18 is a 2X jump. The pattern is very similar for hook weight, wire diameter, gap size, etc. So, what hooks do I use? Most of the dry flies I tie represent mayflies, caddis, and some midge adults, so most commonly I'm tying with standard dry fly hooks in sizes 14 to 24. These also function well for ants, beetles, and some other organisms. I do get large eye hooks below size 20. Yes, I know that they may weigh slightly more, but I'm 74 and the fly does no good if you can't get your tippet through the eye. I especially like the 2X short shank hooks for small dry flies. I actually think of these as having large gaps rather than short shanks, and tie the body and wing by millimeter measurements. These are great for tiny blue-winged olives and tricos. I use some larger and longer hooks for a few dry flies like stimulators, grasshoppers, etc., and these also double for my streamers. I do not like the 3X fine wire that some use on spinners, as I've had too many bent hooks. I do prefer the slightly heavier hooks for soft hackles in the medium sizes for what I think is increased strength, more so than for the weight. I may also use a longer hook for nymphs, especially when I'm tying beadhead nymphs. And I liked curved emerger hooks for the smaller emergers, but commonly I'll use my standard dry fly hooks for all of these patterns, or maybe use a 1X or 2X heavy wet fly hook for my nymph pattern sometimes. For most sunken midge patterns, I use the emerger hooks. For surface midge patterns, including my midge soft hackle, which I fish in the surface, I use my standard dry fly hooks. I don't take streamers as seriously as I probably should, and basically use whatever hooks I have handy, commonly some of my 2 or 3X long hooks that I bought for other flies. Are there exceptions? Of course. Do I have other hook styles? Of course. Like most fly tyers, I've accumulated weird and wonderful different hook styles and materials that fill my fly tying drawers, but likely I'll never use them. But they're ready just in case, who knows. What hooks do you choose to use? What hooks have you found most useful? Well, join me next time when we look at what fly do I put on first when starting fishing for the day. How do I choose what that first fly is? I'm Raj Kletke, and I'll see you soon.